Already. This is Tim Dunn, who's a multi-town council person who has agreed to police these guys.
I've been told to be mean, so.
Yeah, I tend to be mean, be ruthless. He's not a voter in Round Lake, that's his chief characteristic, but he seems also to be an accomplished individual. You know all our candidates, I assume. They're going to give you a brief opening statement. Tim's going to whack them off at 90 seconds. Then we have a complicated number system that will dictate who's going to be asked which question. There are three main categories of questions. Tim's going to read them before they've all had the questions, so we're not going to repeat them every single time. And then we move on to the next one. We get through the three, and we haven't got to an hour and a half. There's a couple of extra questions. But I think an hour and a half of anything is enough. So then afterwards, we've got coffee, water, cookies, and a chance to talk to the candidates and follow up on anything you heard here. All right, so are we ready?
So yeah, just one, again, I know Lydia's mentioned this is not a debate, this is a forum. So, there's not questions from the audience, but plenty of time to talk to the candidates afterwards and ask any questions that you may have. But I know this is a wonderful community here in Round Lake, and for community and neighbors, and so we'll ask everybody to please be respectful, and as well as the candidates, and I'm sure you all will be. We'll have this as an open forum to talk about where you stand on these issues, and we'll hear everybody's thoughts. So let's draw the first number to see who starts with our opening statement or introduction. Number 3, so that is Gary. Let me get my timer started here, Gary. You'll have 90 seconds, and again, as I mentioned to the candidates, when you get to your 30-second mark, I'll raise my hand so that.
All right.
And go ahead.
Hi, my name is Gary Putman. I'm running unopposed for mayor. I'd like to thank Lydia for organizing this wonderful event. We moved here nearly 30 years ago, attracted by a lighted basketball court and miles of trails for skiing and dog walking. And we've not regretted it for a moment. About me, I'm retired several years ago from 33 years in the education field, mostly as an administrator and teacher in the Schenectady School District. I have served on Round Lake planning, zoning, and village boards, as well as, you can tell I've served in education because I can ignore that. Like being in a classroom. I've served on Round Lake's planning, zoning, and village boards, as well as 2 terms on the library board. Currently, I'm the deputy mayor. Most important thing to know about me as a mayor is that we will not always agree. But you can rest assured that you will be heard, your questions will be answered, and that there will be a logical and rational basis for whatever decision I make. That's it.
Thanks, Gary. So next, we'll go in this direction. Paul,
Sure.
you want to go next with your introduction?
Hi there, I'm Paul Block. I've had a career in writing but not in public speaking, so I apologize if I stumble through any of this. I was appointed to the Board of Trustees just last year when Tom Bergen became mayor and gave up his seat, so I'm running to fill the final year of that seat. I moved to Round Lake about 8 years ago after 20 plus years down in Del Mar and stints in Columbia County, California and Long Island. After meeting Janet Patnaud, who grew up in the village, I fell in love with Round Lake for its beauty and history, but most importantly, its people and community spirit. I spent 15 plus years in book publishing as an editor and author of 16 novels, and then I retired just over a year ago after almost 20 years at the Times Union, where I ran the website, timesunion.com. And in fact, I couldn't have served on the board while I was working there. So I'm very happy to be retired, and I'm also happy to be on the board right now. Communication has been my key focus from days in publishing, and I understand the power of words, but that makes me most keen on improving communication among all of us, which I'll discuss more later. I had always hoped that I am running unopposed, as he is, but that's because of the state election law, which requires the seat, which has only 1 more year to be itself. I kind of wish we were all running as one group, but apparently we can't change that. But even though I'm running unopposed, I'm still hoping for your support. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. All right, next, Tom.
Hi, my name is Tom Bergen. I'm currently the mayor here in Round Lake. I was born in Brooklyn. I'm an Army veteran. I got an undergrad degree from Queens College down in the city, and a graduate degree from University of Arizona Tucson. That was one in political science, the other master's in journalism. Got into newspaper reporting, covered government pretty much exclusively, and then ended up flopping over to the state, and where I worked in the state. So I've got about 35 years between the two careers, and it was all about government for me. That's all I did. The last few years, I was a gubernatorial appointee of Pataki, then Spitzer, then Patterson, and then I was shown the door, unceremoniously. That's what happens. And we've lived in Round Lake for 30 years. My wife Cecily and I, we knew nothing about Round Lake when we moved here, and it quickly grew on us. We came down here specifically to the school district, and we love the community. I mean, it's such a great, warm community. Everybody interacts, and everybody seems to get along and disagree. So that's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Right, next, Frank, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Frank Spano. I've been here a little bit over a year. We came from Long Island. I worked in the city for about 30 years in the financial industry. I worked for S&P and for Moody's Investor Service. While I was there, I worked, I sold, I was in sales, I was in retention, compliance. So I dealt a lot with people. My client base was about 800 clients throughout the world. So I've been dealing with people my whole career. After we came here, we moved here basically because our son was upstate. He was up here in Saratoga. So we came here, and this was like a jewel. We did not know it existed. And we met a lot of you all from just walking around the village, and also through Leah's. We've been there almost every day, which kind of shows a little bit, but their cinnamon runs are kind of good. So we got to meet everybody. It's a great community. It's an interesting community, very different. And we would never go anywhere else at this point, so we're very happy here. And I really like the turnout. I think it's a great thing that everybody here is volunteering their time. And is that it?
You have 30 seconds.
Oh, okay. Volunteering their time, it's great that we have such a turnout here. Thank you.
Aaron, you're up.
Okay, I'm Aaron Morris. I'm a third-generation Laker. Born and raised, I'm a living example of the effect of prolonged exposure to Round Lake water. I'm a former village trustee, former deputy mayor. I'm a retired systems analyst from the University of Albany. I had 29 years there, 15 years as manager of a staff of 5, running the university mainframe system. Since I've been retired, I've been a beekeeper since 1975. I consider myself an ecologist, a tree hugger, a golf cart owner.
Thanks, Aaron. All right, next.
I'm sorry.
Go for it.
We were asked to tell what we consider the biggest challenge facing the village. I consider our biggest challenge is dealing with the burgeoning population surrounding us.
Next, Sharon, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all for coming. I want to, where is she? Where's Lydia? There she is. I want to especially thank Lydia for putting this together. I thank her personally, but I want to thank her publicly because I think this is wonderful and I think she deserves a round of applause. I'm Sharon Pinio and I'm standing because I'm doing show and tell. One of the first questions that you're asked in Round Lake, where do you live? Or if you meet somebody you haven't met before, they say, where do you live? And then you try to say, oh, I live over here next to this and that and the other thing, and then they try to figure out, is it this house, the green house, the brown house, the blue house, what house is it? This is where I live. I hold in common with all of you the challenges of rehab, expense, loving your home, living in a cottage. This one is 905 square feet, and I wouldn't have it any other way. It's been tears, it's been trials, it's been joy, and I love it. So that's that. Also, I have my cards here, and I'm going to use this for my little talk, and Tim's probably going to have to cut me off. Would anyone like one so they can hold me accountable and follow along? Anyone who doesn't have one? Okay, I've already passed some out. So, anyone who has a card, you see at the top says strength, vision, and integrity. I currently... What?
That's it.
I'm done?
Yeah.
Okay, that's it, guys. That's great.
Great question.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Koldrick. I'd like to thank Lydia again for putting this all together today. I'd like to thank all of you guys for showing up. I think it shows that there's a real community spirit right now in Round Lake, and there has been for some time, but we've got a lot of capable candidates that are running this year. It's a competitive election, which I think is awesome. And I'd just like to introduce myself to you guys today for those that don't know me as well. Like I said, I'm Matt Koldrick. I live at 35 Colville Avenue. Been there since April of 2009. My wife, Laureen, and my two beautiful daughters, Layla, who's 3 years old, and Charlotte, who's 10 months old yesterday. That's why I want to run for my kids. I want to raise them in this community. I want them to see the special things that Round Lake has to offer, and I want to contribute to making that place a special place going forward. I've been on the planning board for 3 years, and I've been on the ad hoc water committee for a little over a year now. So I've been helping with that, and now I'm running for the 2-year village board spot. I think the two biggest issues facing the village right now are how do we manage our recent growth while maintaining historical character, and how do we manage our long-term costs to ensure that we have fair taxes for all Lakers while providing the services that people want and need. So thank you all for attending today.
Thank you. All right, well, we'll go on to our first question. As Lydia mentioned, I'll pull a number and then we'll go in order from there so everybody gets a chance to go first. And, again, there's not going to be questioning of each other. You can certainly respond during your time if somebody raises something that you want to specifically. And again, this is not an opportunity for the audience to question, but they'll be talking to these specific questions. So start us with question 1. First will be number 5, so I believe that's Tom.
Yep.
So question 1, the quality of Round Lake water has been a topic of discussion for months. This is a multi-part question. So, do you believe a standard other than the standards mandated by the state should be pursued for water quality? If so, how would you determine the appropriate standard? How does the cost of water to residents, both annually and long-term, figure into your thoughts about water quality? Of the recent proposals, which do you support to meet that goal? And what, aside from voting in this election, can and should the residents, aside from voting in this election, can and should the residents have about the solution to this issue? So every participant will have 2 minutes to answer, and I'll again let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I think it's important for everyone to know that when you're elected a village trustee, you represent all 650 so people in the village, not just the people who advocate on any particular issue, because they could be a very small group. And when you consider issues that come before the village board, you must consider everything, not just how clean the water is. You also have to consider how much this is going to cost people. Right now, we are just under sometimes we're over, sometimes we're under the maximum allowable standards at the state that the state sets. And we have a solution that we can get under the allowable standards and be compliant with their regulations, and that's through the aeration process. It's the most affordable, it's going to be the quickest to achieve, and it'll probably get us in compliance fairly quickly, especially with Saratoga County pledging now to do some more filtering. Some of the other solutions escalate in cost as you try to achieve them. So, and quite honestly, there's a couple of the solutions are speculative in nature. We don't know what they will achieve, and the cost is higher. And every time we spend money, we're going to incur debt on this. So my solution is go with aeration, go as soon as possible. We're going to get 60% reimbursement from the state. It'll probably cost the village about $40,000, and we'll be we'll be compliant with the state regs, probably for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, 10 seconds left if you want to talk about any other. You good? Okay.
I'm good.
All right. So next up, Frank, go ahead. Same question.
Okay, and I agree with the aeration process. I think that's good for the short term. But I'm thinking more long term, and with all the new residents moving in and all the additional revenue that we're getting from the residents of the water bill, the bond that we're currently paying off, I think that long term we should also look at a well. But no well within the village where, I don't know, I've only been here a year, but I think that that is good for long-term solution rather than just using a Band-Aid solution and taking care of it for the time being. Let's look toward the future. It will cut down our costs. Initially, yeah, there will be costs for it, but in the long term, it will cut down our costs. It's just the maintenance of the well. And when we were in Long Island, we had it in Massapequa, and the water was clean. We never had any problems with it. It was maintained, and the cost was very low. So I think, to me, that's the best solution long term. But I agree with you. Short term, I think the aeration process would be great.
Got about a minute left. Fair enough. How about the say of the residents, or you didn't touch on that in your minute remaining. Beyond the election, do you think there's other ways to get them involved?
To get the residents involved.
To have some more say on the issue? Or?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the residents should have a say in it, but by attending the meetings, listening, finding out what's going on, and keeping in contact and expressing. Communication is the issue here. Everybody has to communicate and get their points across. And then the village board will discuss it and basically do what the residents need also.
Right, Aaron.
Point of order, you asked the first bullet of the question. There are like 5 bullets here. So are we going to spend 10 minutes on this issue?
So it's 2 minutes for the entire context of the question with those 5 points in there.
Yikes. Okay, so I got to talk.
That's how you're going to talk fast.
Yeah. Is there a standard other than the standards mandated by the state? I'm not one for reinventing the wheel. I think the state is going to give us standards, and those standards, they're going to continue to raise the bar. For that reason, I don't think aeration is a good plan. It's a short-term solution that will bring us into compliance this summer, and I think further down the road, the bar will be raised, and we'll have to jump it again. And that brings me, I'm not looking to bankrupt our citizens, neither am I a fan of using the too expensive boogeyman as a reason for inaction. We have a number of options, and I think ultimately our best option is the GAC, the charcoal activated filter. Expensive solution, but I think in the long run, regardless where we get our water, if we're buying it from Clifton Park or buying it from Saratoga, regardless, the state's going to keep raising the bar, and the GAC filter will serve us better than I feel better than any of the other options. Told you I was a computer geek. Oh, and one thing I haven't heard in any of the discussions is I'm a fan of conservation. I think we should ban open watering of grass lawns. Big waste of water, 30 seconds. Okay, I'm also in favor of investigating private wells. There's water all around us. I remember back from geology days, Lake Albany, and how the aquifers here are very rich. And I think we should at least investigate, as we've decided to do. I think we should investigate to see if we can be our own masters of our own water. As long as we're buying it from somebody else, we're going to be beholden to our water lord. So I think examine all the options.
That's your time, Aaron.
Okay, thank you.
Sharon, you're next.
Hi, I want to thank the ad hoc committee for all the hard work they've done. I also want to thank the current village board of trustees for the work that they've done over the last 5 years. And I especially want to thank John Stevenson, our Department of Public Works Superintendent, who has worked very hard on this project. I've stayed away from the water issue because sometimes you can have too many cooks in the kitchen, but now having to address it, I think that if we'd been in compliance, we would probably not have started these discussions. So it would seem that achieving a 4 to 5 per billion THM level would place us at a level at or below where we would have been if we had never been in violation. An aerator installation added to the previously installed mixer completing the original plan would seem to be the quickest and least expensive way to achieve compliance and bring us to 4 to 5 parts per billion THMs, buying us time to further research remedies if we so desire. I'm a fiscal conservative, but believe that costs come in more forms than dollars alone. I don't know if enough information has been gathered to decide on a proposal decision, right now, there are some questions I have because I haven't been involved that I would like to ask. And they're all mostly having to do with the pipes. Are they lead or are they PVC? I think they're probably PVC in the village. They might be lead from Clifton Park to Round Lake. Who owns the pipes? I found out last night that there's something that's like a big slushy machine that you can put through and it's ice and you can clear out the pipes and you kill everything that's alive in the pipes. Don't know. I think there are more things we can investigate. So I also want to know, where's our valve on our water tank, on the top or on the bottom or in the middle? So there are other questions, but I know that there are a lot of avenues we can take. I know that there are alternate water sources. I am informed, and I believe that the entire community should have input and an avenue to give their opinion of what they would like.
Thanks, Sharon. All right, so next up is Matt. Go ahead.
Okay, so as many of you guys might know, I've been on the ad hoc water committee for about 1.5 years now, and I've probably learned more about municipal water supplies than I'd ever thought was possible. It's an incredibly complex problem that has required a lot of different hours of research. Certainly there's a DOH legal limit, which is the federally mandated number that we have to get under, and that is the number that the village is responsible for ultimately. However, there are proposals for reducing the levels of those numbers, whether it be at the state level or federal level in the future. And so I think the village ought to be prepared for potential reductions in those levels in the future time. We do have grant money available to us right now to be able to use to solve some of those issues. I think right now the best option that I've seen that gives us the most control over our water supply is the activated carbon filters. I think it gives us control and peace of mind, and it will enable us flexibility going forward to adjust our water quality depending on what those future levels may be. Right now, with the grant money, the capital costs would increase our water bills by about $3 per month per resident. Which is, a lot of us are spending more on that right now on water filters alone. There are significant maintenance costs for carbon filtration. You have to replace the filters. Right now we're doing a pilot study to ascertain what those costs are, and so a final decision for me wouldn't be made until we get those numbers to figure out how much it's going to run our system. But in terms of the capital expenditures, you talk about $3 per month. I think the wells, I think they're risky. I think you could spend a lot of money. I think you could spend $1 million trying to find where a well was. And so right now, I think that might be a little bit too risky for the village, but I will wait and see what the desktop study says for the wells. My ultimate goal is to balance the safety of the water quality with the cost of residents. None of us want to pay a crazy amount like we are for water, but at the same time, we want to make sure it's safe and we're within compliance with future regulations too.
Thanks. Great. Okay, Gary.
The quality of the water has been a topic of discussion for years, not for months. In 2013, there were public meetings in this very room, and presentations were made with essentially the same recommendations that we are looking at now. Pressure was exerted on Saratoga County Water Authority. Carbon filters were installed and the problems abated. We are now in the same boat and are required by DOH, Department of Health, to address the problems. My view on aerators, I agree with what Aaron and Matt said, that it's temporary solution, and it's an example of kicking the can down the road some more. Personally, I want to solve the problem once and for all. It's been hanging around for too long. As for preference, I would love our own source of water. I love the idea of a well controlling our own supply. I am, however, risk averse and would need some pretty compelling evidence that the source is sufficient in quantity and quality to ensure that it's economically feasible to produce in order to support this option. Granular activated charcoal filter gives us control over the water quality in a reasonable and a reliable manner. My support for one or the other will depend on the results of the studies. As for voters having a say in the issue, I think that the process at the Ad hoc Water Advisory Committee that I was on with Matt and another member, which is a good process to follow. We created a Facebook page, held public informational meetings, created a dedicated, said that already, sent periodic village-wide emails, and it's a good model to follow in the future. Costs, as for costs, better long-term planning is needed, absolutely. A reliable means of controlling current and emerging contaminants is needed, and done.
All right, Paul, fire away.
Hi, actually, it was the water issue that prompted me to accept the offer. When Tom Bergen became mayor and left the seat, he asked if I'd finish off the year of the term. And so I'm very interested in the topic. And I really think the ad hoc committee's done a great job and has been really great in advising the board. As part of that, we came up with a three-prong, basically, move forward on those three areas of the aeration, the filters, and possibility of a well. One concern I have about state levels is that the level is just an average. They set a level now which could get lower, very likely, and we just average it out basically over a year. So you could literally have 3 quarters, technically, I guess, where you're over the level, and a 1 quarter that's so low that your average ends up keeping you at the level or just under. So I do have concerns as long as we're getting water outside the village. We have no control. They may give us clean water for the next year, and then suddenly we get really bad water. So because of that, I'm not set in any of the ways yet, except I would like to move forward, begin the process on all three, which we've started. I'm a little concerned about tank stirring because it only will bring down, I believe, one of the THMs, but not the HAAs, I believe, right? And so I have some concerns there. It still might be a way, if the cost is right, to start that right away. With a well, I think that's a great idea. I also have concerns about whether we could just put money into it and never come up with a solution. And really, no one's mentioned, I think, yet, it's not just the cost of the well, but depending on where it is in the village, where the study says might be a good place, it could be $500,000 or more just to get the pipes over there. So that's a large issue. I also think the filters is a good thing. As long as we get water from an outside source, I think the filters are a. Have you got my 30 yet, brother?
You're missing it.
Okay.
That's your time.
Okay, I'll finish up. Okay, that's what he said.
Go ahead and finish your thought.
All right. Anyway, I think we should. It's the only thing that will give us total control because we can adjust the amount of carbon we use if we need to save money. We can put a certain percentage of the water through it or not. And I also so anyway, thanks very much.
That wasn't too mean, right?
No, that was good at all.
So our next question is going to be about the character of the village and growth. And number 2 will go first. That's Matt.
All right.
So I'll read again, just like we did with the first question. I'll read the question and all the parts. You'll have 2 minutes to share your thoughts, and I'll give you the high sign in 30 seconds and try to be expressive enough to get your attention. Residents have been vocal about maintaining the character of Round Lake. What do you think is the character of the village? How do you think that Round Lake should balance proposals for change and development with the historic preservation of buildings and green spaces to keep the character of the village? Round Lake commissioned and is considering an initial draft comprehensive plan. What do you think must be part of the final comprehensive plan, and how do you think the comprehensive plan should be used? And what do you propose for managing the flow of everyday traffic and special events? And you have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
All right, so I think obviously clearly the unique architecture plays a role in the character of the village, but equally as important are the residents that make it up. It's Lakers who truly make Round Lake a special place to live, and it's the blend of families, the people that have been here for decades and the people that have moved in the last few years. It's the type of houses that attract people with a mix of affordable housing and more upscale housing. That doesn't really exist in America anymore. We increasingly find ourselves isolated as communities, and I think the community vibe of Round Lake is really what makes it special. The neighborhood feel, the walkability and the green space, those are 2 of the most important things where we're running into our neighbors all the time, whether it's at the post office or in the parks, and I will fight to make sure that we maintain both the green spaces and the walkability of the neighborhood. Smart development is important. We have to manage development smartly to maintain a reasonable tax base and maintain reasonable tax levels for the residents. But I want to make sure that it's a welcoming place to be. I think we should do more to welcome the people of Victoria Landing and Griffin's Ridge and bring them into the community, doing more community events. I think we need to preserve the unique structures, especially in the core of the village. I would support photographing buildings before work begins on them to make sure that we have a documented record. I think we got to balance the property owner's rights with maintaining the character of the core. So we want to maintain the general footprint of the village while at the same time keeping that visual appeal of the structures that we have. I think the planning board should be more active in reviewing designs, and I would support a design review commission for buildings in the core of the village to help residents get ideas about how to maintain the historical accuracy and preservation of their homes. Real quick, traffic's been an issue for years. We really need to look at parking and traffic within any comprehensive plan. And in terms of special events, I would really like to see the core of the village blocked off except for residents, and then keep parking on the exterior of the village and find a way to shuttle people into the core of the village for events so we keep the traffic levels down and keep it the pedestrian place that we all love.
All right, next, Gary. Go ahead.
The characters should be the characters of Round Lake. I heard an ad this morning for Key West and thought it summed up the answer to this question quite nicely. It said, close to perfect, far from normal. There are many aspects to the character of the village that I think make us far from normal. For example, post on Facebook that your car needs a jump, and within 5 minutes you'll have multiple offers of help.
Here.
And get rewarded with a jar of honey. A party can break out at a moment's notice. These things just don't happen in other communities. Physically, the structure, the buildings, I agree with Matt, I would favor an architectural review board for the historical district in order to maintain the historic feel of the village. 26 Albany Ave could have been prevented with one, and that would have been a very good thing. Keeping the village pedestrian friendly is crucial. Strolling around the village is as popular now as it seems to have been way back in the day. Balanced proposals for development. The proposals for development have been in the periphery of the village, so do not affect historical preservation of buildings. At the planning board meeting the other night, restricting planned development districts was mentioned. I would not support an outright moratorium on PDDs as a means of preserving green face, and I have 30 seconds. For example, if a developer came in wanting to develop high-quality senior housing and offered a public benefit of $500,000, as was mentioned at the meeting, I would take a hard look at what could be done for the public with those funds. For example, buying the Inn at Round Lake for a community arts center. Comprehensive plan, entirely too broad a topic to discuss now, but it should be used it must be used as a basis for planning and zoning board decisions and serves as a basis for future zoning changes.
I came here from the suburbs, and what I first noticed is that this is a community of porches. People live in their front yards, whereas in the suburbs they live in their backyards, and that makes a huge difference. And people walk around the community and meet each other and talk when somebody's on the porch. Parties break out, as we said, all the time, and they tend to be community-wide. I've hardly heard of there's so many parties here that almost everyone's invited to each of them, and that's kind of unique. I didn't really know my neighbors in Del Mar anymore. Of course, it's the people primarily, and it's really been great to have a community of people who are creative and warming and welcoming, and that's what we want to promote. We have incredible resources here from the lake and the trails and parks, the auditorium, our local coffee gathering place, one of the greatest restaurants in the area, concerts, festivals, art exhibits. So we really want to do anything we can, I think, to keep that going. And that's mostly done by the people who are drawn to live here. They are looking for that kind of lifestyle. So I'm not as worried as some might be that people are going to come and turn it into a different kind of flavor. However, I do agree an advisory group would be ideal. Not owners' rules being set for people, but to have the opportunity where people could get information on how to inexpensively maybe update part of their house if they're looking for renovation, and could get resources and advice from their fellow residents. I think that the possibility of obtaining more green space through purchasing land that's up for sale is something we should look at if it makes sense money-wise. And of course, the parking is a critical issue that we really need to focus strongly on, because if we don't, we need to get that into shape so that we can walk our streets cleanly, and when we have events, we have the right places that's not obtrusive. So I think that we need to move forward strongly on a parking plan.
Thank you very much. All right, next, Tom.
Thank you, Tim. The character of the village, I think, is we all know it's, like many have said, it's historic in nature, it's unique architecture. There's a sense of community spirit that probably doesn't exist anywhere else. One other thing that I always found nice about Round Lake, it's a safe community. It's a safe place for kids to run around the streets, and you don't see that too much anymore. We have great parks, we have access to the trails, we have a lake that we can take advantage of. We're isolated from modern development in a way, but we're modern people. And that's what really kind of makes me feel good about Round Lake. I can walk out and talk to anybody. We all share something. We live in a unique place. And I'd like to see controlled development. I think we've done that with these two developments that we've got, we have now that are building. I also think that we have opportunities to preserve green space, and we have. We bought that big lot in the center of the village, for example, just a couple of years ago. I think we do what we can afford to do. I think there's a lot of opportunities to preserve green space. I also think the comprehensive plan will lead to changes in the zoning and the codes that might foster that kind of openness, keeping Round Lake open. The other thing was, there's a lot in these questions. I don't know what you do about I think everyday traffic we police pretty well. I think for major, you can't put a parking lot up, a parking garage up in Round Lake, but you can funnel traffic, you can monitor traffic, police traffic, and if you find you've got to shuttle people like we used to do down from the Antiques, for the Antiques Festival, we make that a compulsory thing. You got to park up there and you got to get shuttled down here. Thank you.
And just so you know, there's a lot in these questions, and Lydia did a great job of soliciting from the public and trying to get them all packaged together and organized so that we could hear really thorough stuff. So kudos to all you guys on being able to answer all these questions. Time for that. Go ahead.
Okay, to me, Round Lake, actually to me and my wife, Round Lake is the whole Long Channel. Okay, everybody is just so friendly. We've met so many people. Walking through the streets in the village is like going back in time. It's a culture shock coming here from Long Island. Long Island was just very cold. You get in your car, you drive to the store, you drive back, you don't see anybody. Over here, we walk down the hill, go to Leah's, walk around the village. I'm sure many of you have seen us walking. The group gets larger and larger as more people move in up the hill. And it's just an incredible place to live, incredible people, and everybody is coming together. The people on, up on Victoria Landings, everybody's coming down, everybody's integrated. We're getting involved with the community. We did the antiques fair. For the tree lighting ceremony, my wife and I were here pouring the hot chocolate for the kids. I mean, we get involved, and it's a good feeling to do that. And you meet a lot of people that way, and it's a lot of good people. Yeah, there is growth now happening in the community, and we are protected, I guess, from Route 9 and also the Northway on the other side. From what I understand, there is land available up north of us. I mean, I don't know the cost or the budget, but I would suggest trying to buy bits and pieces of land in order to protect and control further development. The parking situation, the traffic situation, yeah, we do have the bypass that goes around the village, but you do get a lot of people that do come driving through, and sitting in Leah's, you do see people like going right past the stop sign there. What can we do about that? I mean, other than having a policeman sit there all day long, that's a tough one. I mean, you can't put speed bumps there or anything, but that is an issue, but we're hoping, I guess, that the bypass would control the traffic situation.
Thank you. Aaron.
I remember as a child an article published in, I think it was the Times Union at the time, it might have been the Saratogian, for all I know, but it mentioned that Round Lake is just going to be consumed by all the development around it, and it would just pop. I think every effort should be made to procure as much of the undeveloped land within the village boundaries as is financially feasible. The comprehensive plan, set out to establish a more local to the capital district. I'm sorry. My understanding and fact checking is in order here is that our founding fathers, inspired by a meeting at Oak Bluffs, Massachusetts, set out to establish a more local to the capital district community, and Round Lake was formed. Slowly, the lands have slipped away from the original charter. The village is in the grove that endures, but the grove shrinks around us. The draft comprehensive plan defines design control. Yikes. Defines a defined control district and speaks specifically of 3 different design control districts: the historic core, the rural preservation, and ecologically sensitive sub-district. Yeah. Lacking in the plan is the definition of design control. What all these areas, how do you control it? I think the definition of the areas is admirable, but PDDs and DUDs always seem to usurp the project. I think we should firm up our zoning definitions, be proactive, propose changes in development, and stay the course. Please don't cut me. No, I'm sorry. This is the Academy Awards. We are not just a community. We are not just a community. We're an extended family, united by our unique neighborhood, proud of our colorful architecture, defined by our cue the music. Come on, defined by our in the auditorium. This is good stuff, folks. And blessed to have neighbors who work together, play together.
We gotta move on.
I'm not yielding.
We gotta
Play together.
There's lots of time at the end.
We are the auditorium, the track and first, the village-wide garage sale, Wordless, the Clark House, the Round Lake Hose Company. We are a destination community because we are freaking awesome.
There you go.
Sharon, your time has been used up.
No, he just forfeited his right to cookies, that's all.
I'm down with it.
All right, Sharon,
All right.
you still ready?
Yeah, okay.
Our last response here.
The character of Round Lake, I see it has 3 major components, and I wrote these out before I fully read the comprehensive plan, so I did not plagiarize it. I believe that those three elements are life, expression, and history. And I believe that those are available to all 3 of our communities. Victorian Landings, Griffin's Ridge, and the Old Village. Each of these 3 things embraces the other and requires protection. The life of the village is in the hearts of its families and relationships, new and old. They thrive in an oasis buffered from pulsing commerce and stresses on the other side of the trees. The expression of the village grows from its relationships and from its individuals, through the arts, study, and gentle recreation, summoning us back to an easier time. The history of the village is in its heritage through its people, its unique place in the fabric of our nation, told through the time-honored integrity and art of its structures. I believe that there is a whole town, county, and state that can absorb change and development, that Round Lake is a unique National Historic Site and should not compromise its integrity and value by alteration. Rather, we should work to enhance our value. Also, we must make every effort to preserve our green spaces. Right here, look at this, look what Malta's gonna do. I'm on the zoning board here and in the town of Malta. See this? There's the Round Lake bypass right here. That's a C9 district. That's soft commerce. C9 district or C10 district, soft commerce, right up against our borders. We need to preserve our green spaces. The comprehensive plan, it's a gorgeous thing. The only thing I would add is the word integrity in certain parts about architectural preservation. I've not really thought very much about traffic and parking, but it's been a problem for many, many years, and it does require community collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we're actually doing pretty well. 45 minutes in, we've gotten through 2 of the 3. So here's the third question. We will start with number 4, which is Paul, and continue in order. This is about communication. There are some residents who strongly believe the communication between village government and the residents needs improving. What, if anything, do you think the board and the village office can or should do to better communicate with residents? Would your proposal extend to all village entities, the Zoning Board of Appeals, Planning Board, Department of Public Works? Would your proposal include a way for residents to comment and ask questions outside of the meeting? And do you see any pitfalls in your approach? Paul, please start us off.
I'm pleased at how we do encourage public participation at all our various board meetings, but I am concerned that we do a better job at communicating with our public. But actually, I don't really like the word communication as much, in this sense, as much as conversation. We have a website that fits a certain role and need, but it's sort of a one-way website. It's more of a notice board the village has to get information out. What we really need more two-way and two-way communication between the board and the public, and multi-way among everyone in the village. A lot of that's being done right now on Facebook, and while I see a real usefulness for that and honor a lot of that's on there, it also can be kind of a free-for-all place. And sometimes I think if I had just seen some of the threads on some of the Facebook sites, and when I was thinking about moving here, I might have said, oh, I don't want to go near that community. But I know the community, and I know it's a place people let us esteem. So I am concerned that we not set up something that would mirror that. However, there are other methods we could use for to create better conversation. At the Times Union, we had one person overseeing, and only part of his job was to do that, over 150 community blogs. We could use a similar kind of technology as like a WordPress blog where we could post information, conversations, public could communicate back and forth, like the commenting, but something that was more moderated and didn't get off into a lot of tangential areas and name calling. I don't think we'd have to do it in a way that burdened the paid staff. It could be overseen by people on the board, for instance, or other moderators. It's something I think we should look at. Basically, I also think our use of video, which Gary's done a lot of lately, is great, and we should make that a standard at our meetings and public hearings and have them posted online so that people can see whatever they want. So in any way, I think we need to do a lot more, and I'm looking forward to that new session coming up.
All right, Tom, go ahead.
Thank you, Tim. Good communication is kind of a subjective kind of thing. If you have access and things going well, all the communication's great. If you are not getting your way and you're a chronic whiner, then there's no communication. So we have a little of everything in the village. But one of the things we've tried to do in this past year, and I take as much credit as Gary and Heidi and Chris and Paul, is we've tried to open up these meetings. We videotape pretty much everything now. We push it out onto the web. We post everything that we do as fast as we could possibly post it in terms of announcing events. We try to get more people involved in the process. For years, I've been on the board 20 years, for years, you wouldn't have anybody at a village board meeting. Now we've got 10 to 20 people at a meeting. And I think that's a tremendous progress that we've made in the last year. I think we can continue to do more. I don't know if there's a way to, they have the public service channels. I don't know, you could televise board meetings. You could invite more people to participate in any of these various committees. I don't know that we get out in the community enough to ask people to serve. And I think people like to be asked, and I think there's a lot of capable people out here who've done it. And I just think that what we can't do is we can't go into your house and drag you to a meeting. You've got to come, you've got to express an interest, and you've got to be a responsible enough citizen to want to try to get the information. Just come into the village office. We'll give you anything you need to know. I think that's about all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank?
Okay. I think communication is basically a two-way street. I think that, us as residents here, we have to get involved in the meetings also. So it is important that we also attend the meetings rather than waiting for all the information to just come out to us. When we moved in, that was the first thing we did. We tried to get involved. We tried meeting people. We tried to get involved with the community. We attended most of the meetings to see what's going on in the community, and that's what prompted me to run to get more involved. I think that we also need to get more of the email addresses of the residents so that we can be in communication. And yes, then they can email us back if they do have any questions. It's not during a meeting or any time that they have a question, they can email us back, and we can open up communication. But I think people need to, residents need to attend the meetings more, follow Facebook. There's a lot of info on Facebook that, that's out there. Get involved, meet with us, talk to the community, and just stay in touch. And like I said, two-way street communication, and that will just open it all up for us. It's a small community, and we can all communicate with each other.
You have 45 seconds. Anything else?
You want me to communicate some more?
Any pitfalls that you see? And
Pitfalls? Well, yeah, you're going to get a bunch of. You're going to get.
you're going to yield your time to Aaron.
You will open up a lot of questions, a lot of, irritated people will just keep emailing you and reaching out to you, but that's something that you have to deal with. That's it. Open communication is the best thing.
Okay, Aaron, he gave you 18 seconds.
Okay. I think a concerted effort should be made to utilize the Round Lake webpage. This shuns social media, Facebook webpage to post correct, unbiased, and pertinent information regarding the goings-on of official village business, including zoning and the ZBA and planning board. I didn't include DPW in that because DPW contributes regularly to every village board meeting. Residents will voice comments, ask questions, and rabble-rouse on social media. There's no stopping it. Some comments and questions may get picked up by some trustees, although I understand and share the sentiment that it's hard to make all the meetings. If a resident wants to ask a question or make a comment, they should attend the meetings. Or if they can't attend the meetings, they can send email to aaronqboris@gmail.com. And as far as do I see any pitfall in my approach? No, I don't. But I'm open to comments.
Anything else? You got all kinds of time.
Oh, well,
You got 45 more seconds.
I'd like to go back to the traffic thing. As one who lives right in front of one of those four-way stop signs, I long for the day where village roads are reserved for village residents. Traffic that comes from Route 9 to the Northway or vice versa, or traffic that comes down Washington and Hurley High, use Route 9, use the bypass. I don't know how we would enforce that, but again, that's my vision. Thank you.
Sharon.
Okay, I think both sides, both the appointed and elected officials on one side and the community on the other side, I think they both bear responsibility for communication. It's the responsibility of the officials to put it out there and let people know where it is, and it's the responsibility of the citizens to go get it. I think the way that we can start this whole thing is by putting out a survey of how all the citizens, all the residents, how they think we can improve communications. And on the start or at the end of it, we can say what currently exists and ask the opinions of our residents. And get that mailer back and use that as a platform to start. I'm done with this topic. So I'd like to go back with what I missed. Hi, I'm Sharon Pinio, and I didn't do this all at the same at the beginning because I ran out of time trying to be cute. So I am a current zoning board member in the village, and I have been for quite a while. I fought like a bear to preserve the character of the village. Many of you know that. I am a mother and a grandmother. I'm also newly on the town zoning board for the town of Malta. I bring with me information from Malta that impacts the village around Lake. I'm a conduit for information, which I believe is a good thing. I'm a former journeyman and iron worker. I have built bridges, and the Pepsi Arena, I set the first truss. I'm a paralegal, and I'm retired from the New York State and Local Employees Retirement System. Thank you all very much for coming, and thank you, Tim.
All right, Matt, go ahead.
I do believe we need more communication and more transparency from village government. The current communication is incredibly fragmented. Just looking at Facebook alone, we have 3 different Facebook pages where we attempt to communicate information. There may be 5, I don't know. There's maybe 2 I'm not on, who knows. But anyway, I think there should be one official Round Lake government Facebook page as an electronic bulletin board where the village can disseminate the village business information, such as agendas, such as meeting minutes, such as important dates and reminders, and that we can put that information out there from one single entity, and then that can be shared across the multitude of neighborhood groups that are on Facebook. I like the changes to the bulletin board right here in the office. I think they're great. I think it's laid out a lot better now than it was in the past. I think we need more timely posting of minutes to the village website, and I think we need more detailed agendas. I think it's a great idea that people need to come to more meetings, but sometimes if the agendas are a little bit vague, you might not know something that might be important to you. So I think giving a little bit more detail and context, residents can pick and choose which meetings they can go to, knowing that there's maybe 36 meetings a year between planning board, zoning board, and village, and we can't all make all of them. I think one idea that I had was kind of a little bit of an out-of-the-box idea is a village text alert for emergency communication purposes. Other towns and villages have this. You can enroll your cell phone number and get emergency alerts if there's an emergency in the village. You could potentially also use that for getting out key and important information. I think it's something we can look into. Cost-wise, obviously, is always a factor. I think we can use the water bill shot to collect more email addresses. We only have about half of the email addresses for the residents in the village, so I think we should maybe use something like the water bill to collect email addresses so we can get the information out there. I think we should have a physical comment box, and I think we should have an online comment box, which is an email, not a Facebook discussion. Suggestions at roundlakevillage.org. People can email their suggestions and comments outside of meeting hours, and then we can use that on the board, various boards, to be able to take that into decision-making process. I don't think you're ever going to. Yep. I don't think you're ever going to please everybody, including Tim, when I run out of time. But I think we can simplify, streamline the approach, and get something that works for most residents. So thank you guys all for attending today. I really appreciate it.
Gary.
Okay. I would like to communicate a thank you to Cynthia Young, our newest Malta Town Board member. Thank you for coming, seeing what's going on in Round Lake. As I previously outlined, the model we used on the Water Committee was, I think, quite effective. I know many of you have too much information about water. I think we did a good job of getting the information out there to people who wanted to be involved. Going forward for the village, I would propose the following. A village Facebook page, official, there's a term for it, a informational only government page with commenting turned off for fairly obvious reasons. As Matt mentioned, there are at least 3 other Facebook pages on which discussions can be conducted. This would be for timely information, not archival information. The village website does a good job of storing the archival information, minutes of meetings. It's in the process of being updated to make it and being made more user-friendly. Village-wide emails, it was a good idea about using the water bill to collect emails because I've been attempting to get emails. There are forms out at just about every meeting asking for people's email addresses because we still, believe it or not, only have about half the village. 30 seconds. As for pitfalls, I do not see any pitfalls of keeping people informed. Comments and questions outside of meetings. Facebook page will have buttons to send message to the village. Looking at keeping the office open one evening a week for residents like me when I worked who had difficulty getting to the office. This would be manned by the mayor or trustees. They don't know it yet,
Time.
but it's a thought. Okay.
And so those are our three main questions. Lydia, we're just about at an hour, and if you'd like, we could do some of the
Is
additional questions.
everybody ready for cookies, or do you want to plow through first?
If I might suggest, we can maybe do 1 minute responses to some of these additional questions, if everybody's so willing.
No, if you want cookies, raise your hand. If you want
Ken, are you guys okay with going through some of these additional questions? So what we'll do is we'll just do a minute each, maybe for the responses, so we can get through these quickly. There are 4 additional questions, and the first one focuses on creative solutions to reduce spending in the village. And here are some suggestions: not mowing roadways, limiting plowing and salting roads during non-business hours, bottling and selling Round Lake water, selling compost, selling wood from harvested trees, renting a community room for events and meetings, creating a hydroelectric plant by damming the creek north of town, or any additional ideas that you may have. So a lot of ideas there, and we'll have Sharon, number 1 selected here, to start us off.
Quick question. I have to say, what does that mean, not mowing roadways?
I have no idea.
I think that
It meaning the sides of the roads.
sides of roads.
Yeah.
Like a typo, Maggie, or something. Something like that.
I don't mow the roads in
Generally,
front of
we
my
save a
house.
lot of money by not mowing streets.
I figured, okay.
Yeah, right.
All right, so
We've done that.
Sharon, we'll have you start off. We'll just do 1 minute, and go ahead, Sharon.
Well, as it says in the comprehensive plan that we're kind of looking toward enhancing our values as a community, as an attraction. I'd like to talk to some other communities who are historic communities and see what they've done to preserve and to raise money. I'd like to go outside of our community as well as polling members of our community to get ideas and bring it together. And I'd like to have a review committee. I'd like to enhance our historic preservation committee or whatever other committee other people might think of to do that.
Okay, Matt, fire away.
I just have 2 ideas that I thought about that I'll float out there. Number 1 is paperless billing for water bills and other government bills that we get. If you do that, you save postage and printing and ink. Be a small savings, but it'd be a savings nonetheless, and it'll make maybe things a little easier for people. The other thing that I've been thinking about is we spend about, I think, $16,000 a year right now on electricity for the street lamps. An LED solution, like they have in Griffin's Ridge at Victoria Landing, would save 65% of the electricity costs. So just a couple ideas.
Gary, fire away.
We are already participating in a shared services consortium with Saratoga County. We buy salt through the county, some office supplies, and I was on that committee. I don't think we'll be able to do a hydroelectric plant, but in my water investigations, I did come across mini turbines that reside inside of water lines and generate electricity, and that would be I would be interested in investigating that. That was it.
Great. All right, Paul.
If we get well water, we could look at bottling and selling. Right now, we can't really sell the water because somebody's already using the name Death Wish. But I do think another area that we could look at maybe is, and actually I don't think the water's Death Wish, by the way, but I think that we might look for more sources of grant money from outside, as Sharon mentioned, for various things, whether it's the auditorium, elsewhere. I think we've had some luck with grants, and we should pursue that more actively.
Tom.
On the reducing spending in the village, one of the things is trying to attract more grant money. We were lucky enough to get a $125,000 grant this year from CARI for the auditorium. We got, through Senator Tedisco, we got 125 or so for the new salt barn. And we've also got a $711,000 grant to improve the water system. Of course, it comes with a 40% part of our we're going to have to pay for. But some of the other things we're looking at right now, not mowing the roadways as much as we normally do, Lydia. That's in our
I don't
budget.
write those
That's in our budget plan. And we've been talking to John about maybe backing off a little bit on the plowing when he thinks he can save some money for on the crew and salt. And some of these other things, I don't really know where they come from. Because the compost is no good, we don't harvest our trees. If we don't want to drink the water, how are we going to sell it? Thank you.
You mentioned Carrie. Thank you, Carrie. Who's in the back
Frank, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to address this really from the revenue side rather than the reducing the spending. We have the auditorium here, which to me is like a fantastic place. It's incredible. I think we should utilize that more. Rent it out, look for different venues to bring in, and just expand upon it, because we've gone there many times. A lot of times it's not even being used. We should utilize that. Another thing that I would do in order to increase revenue really would be to put up a toll gate on the Zinn Smith Trail so that anybody coming through, we can collect money. Count it? It's not.
I'm a moderator, I'm not All right, Aaron, go ahead.
As a tree hugger, beekeeper, ecologist, I strongly support not mowing, not just the roadways. I am in the process of, I own a vacant lot down on Barn Alley. I'm in the process of making that a no-mow vacant lot and converting it into meadow. Bit of work to get it going, but it'll be beautiful. Come see it this summer. The compost, I disagree. I think our compost is high quality. I've seen it. We should use it to compost around our trees and thereby cutting down more of the mold. Thank you.
All right, good job. You guys all stayed under the 1 minute. That was fantastic. We can get a couple others here. So next question, and let's see if it will be Aaron, you can start for us. Would you support contracting for trash pickup in the municipality, incorporating the expense into village taxes to eliminate a monthly bill and allow residents to add another deduction to their year-end tax return?
If it works, it's a no-brainer, of course. But it's funny, before I read these last week, I was thinking, gee, we should just have a huge trash bin down at the village garage that residents, instead of putting trash out every week, could haul their trash down to the village garage, throw it in the dumpster. I mean, that would be a significant savings. But the tax thing, if we could work it that way, great, bring it on.
Sure.
I don't know if it will, with the tax structure changing and the deductibles in New York, how this would play out. So I would kind of want to hold off on this to see how 2018 federal and state tax balances out, whether this would be an advantage or not. I personally take my trash up to Saratoga.
Go ahead, Matt.
My gut reaction on it is no. I think some people have smaller trash cans, some people have bigger trash cans, some people take their stuff to the dump. I think we should have choice with that. I think the deduction, if there was one, would be very small. So my gut reaction would be no, but certainly we could look into, taking a little straw poll and see what people want. But my own personal opinion is probably would be not a great idea.
Jerry.
One thing about me is that if I don't know something, I will admit it. I don't know the answer to this. It would need to be investigated, run it by the village attorney, see what other small villages are doing, and see what makes sense.
Paul, go ahead.
I also don't know, but I'm very open to investigating it. I'm a little leery. As Matt mentioned, there are a lot of different needs from different people have for their garbage, and I also, as Sharon pointed out, wonder whether there will be any tax benefit at all. But if there's a way to get a really great rate that everyone's paying less, then I think we could look into it. But I don't see it as a real strong issue right now.
Tom.
I agree. I don't see it as a big issue. I think that most people choose their own trash service, and there's multiple ones that people use in the village. There's people who use small cans, there's people who use big cans, there's people who take the stuff up on their own. I don't know how you administrate it, because we become the administrator of the trash pickup service all of a sudden. And I don't know whether the savings you might get out of your quarterly trash bill would not be offset by more work in the village office. We have 2 people in the village office. And some of these ideas that we floated around here are great, but remember, you've got 2 people working in the village office, and that's all, and they're part-time. And whatever you choose to do, you're going to have to either increase the number of people that work for the village, or you're going to have to try to do a less than stellar job. Some suggestions you have us do. Thank you.
All right, Frank?
It would really depend on what vendor we would use in order to pick up the garbage, but, I mean, what Tom just said made a lot of sense. He's kind of like swaying me a bit here. But I was thinking that the cost would actually go down rather than us contracting with a collector on our own and the whole village contracting. We may get a better rate that way. But that, seems to be, it needs to be determined, but I would say, yeah, let's look into it and see if we can have some cost savings there.
All right, penultimate question here. We'll start with you, Frank, number 6.
Yeah.
How would you improve community participation in eco-friendly practices, including tree planting, recycling, and decreasing the use of harmful chemicals and pesticides like Roundup that can affect the environment, our water, and human and animal health? Again, 1 minute. Go ahead.
Basically, communication and education. Getting the word out there, educating the public, and letting them know what their options are in order to get rid of this waste and in order to save the environment and keep it clean. So it's just communication and education.
Aaron?
This is not my question, but it's right up my alley. I'm running on the Round Lake Relief Project. I have encouraged my entire lifetime tree planting. Over the years, we've planted over 350 trees around the village. will continue to do that. Have a village-wide, we used to have a village-wide Arbor Day observance. It was a great day. All the trees down the east side of Roe Park were Arbor Day trees. We had a village tree nursery, and it was great.
Sharon?
I'd like to see a presentation from people at DEC, people in Saratoga. I'd like to have another cookies and punch get-together and have an education presentation by people in the field. I think that would be great.
Thank you. Matt, go ahead.
Just going back to the trash thing, one thing I would like to look at too real quick is annual bulk pickup again, go from every 2 years back to annual, so something to look into. There's $250,000 grant money available to villages and municipalities that increase their environmental efficiency. So, you know, if you hit 4 out of 10 key points, one of them being LED street lamps, the other one being maybe publishing our municipal energy usage. I think those are some things that we can do if we show and lead by example. I think other people may follow. I think Village Cleanup Day that Whirlist does is great, and I think we should increase that. And I agree with Aaron that we should be doing something for Arbor Day every year village-wide because we do a great job with community events.
Gary, go ahead.
Whirlist already does a very nice job of maintaining some of the gardens and walkways, and they're always looking for more volunteers. So, as for tree planting, ironically, that's fairly easy. We just have to organize ourselves to get doing it. We can use parkland funds for that. A resident suggested 150 trees for 150 years for the sesquicentennial celebration, which is already.
That's 30 seconds.
Oh. Education is the key to reducing the use of harmful pesticides. Sharon's idea is a good one. It may serve as a basis for a Whirlist presentation that used to happen a few years back. And certainly I will review the village crew's use of pesticides. I don't believe they use them, but I can't guarantee it. But it's worth checking out.
Thanks, Gary.
I think tree planting is an important step that we should be looking at doing more of, and such things as dealing with streetlights. That was brought up at a recent meeting, and apparently it's more complicated than I realized to get the power company to change the bulbs, and could cost us a lot of money to do. But I think it's something we should look at and figure out, because I think the last time we looked at it was a few years ago. Someone else, I don't know if it was someone on the board or where I was at a meeting, had talked about wanting to do a climate change event in the village, and maybe some kind of an eco-friendly, some kind of an event that brought the community together would work on that. Another thing that could just promote things is maybe working with getting people out dealing with the trails. Behind my house on Colville, there's a former trail up into the hills there that is just grown over. You can kind of walk up there, up the steps and wander through. But those might be kind of areas we might look at restoring some of those trails and getting that spirit, building that spirit toward the ecology of the area.
Thanks, Paul. All right, so last question, this is just a fun one, and we'll just start down at the end with Sharon.
He didn't go.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead.
All I was gonna,
I want cookies.
all I was gonna say is there's a lot of great ideas. I think we're exploring some of them, and it's important that we all educate ourselves, and the families educate their kids. And I'm a almost 71-year-old adult, and I just learned that I'm not allowed to be anywhere near our garden or the bee place where the bees get, the monarch butterflies can come with anything like a pesticide or dirty socks. Right? I'm not allowed. So I think we just have to keep talking about it and educating ourselves about it. I think we're going to be fine.
Thanks, Tom. All right, so as I said too quickly, just a fun question here to close, and Sharon, we'll have you start. Just 30 seconds. Will there be a new tetherball on the tetherball pole at the playground?
If the majority of the community wants it. And since I have a couple more seconds, Aaron, don't you dare put a dumpster by my house.
Don't I dare put what?
A dumpster over at the highway, the garage, and community-wide dumpster. Oh my gosh.
Are we doing a final statement?
No further. So Matt, go ahead.
Although I've enjoyed watching kids play with an imaginary tetherball, I would support having a real tetherball at the playground.
Gary?
I would rather watch Napoleon Dynamite to get my tetherball fix.
Well,
Yes, for tetherballs, and to close, I want to apologize to Lydia for not thanking her at the beginning. So thank you, Lydia, and really thank all of you for coming and being interested, as I know everyone is in this community, of what goes on here.
We'll get a new tetherball after we commission a study, hire consultants, do the marketing, have a big discussion on Facebook that lasts forever, and then decide what kind of color, how high it's going to be, how long the chain's going to be. And thank you very much for showing up. I mean, this is really great. We haven't done this in years, and it's great. Thank you.
right, tetherball? Aaron, what do you think? Tetherball?
When I was a kid, I lost a tooth playing tetherball, no tetherball.
Great. Well, I want to echo what the candidates said. Thank you to Lydia for organizing this event, and more importantly to all of you for coming out, because far too often in our community, people respond after the fact and say, well, wait a minute, why is someone doing that decision? Why has someone made that decision? Or I don't like that person for this or that reason. And for people to step up and try to serve their community, it's vitally important. We need to have good people doing this. So thank you all for being involved and coming out today. And thank you to the candidates. And
Thank you, Tim.